We've got the boys here from FREETRAIN who took the brand from 0 to 10 million inside 3 years.
We've had to have some balls to turn down Adidas and go, no, we're going to do it ourselves.
Can you just talk into what some of these Chinese factories are like and what some of these people go through?
Get to know yourself as well as you can.
We learned from that point on, greed kills, and you never do that again. When making decisions for yourself, make it the decision that you would want for your child.
Not enough of us question our narratives in our life. It's by questioning the narrative that you allow your brand to grow, you allow your mind to open and everything to start to fit into places, because you have to question everything that you think you know.
The rage that went through me at the time in terms of dealing with that disappointment, I'd never had anything like that, and I've never experienced anything like that since I started drinking. I was going to the casino, losing it all.
I think a real lesson we've learned is if something's too good to be true, it normally is.
Quick one before we jump into this podcast. Do me a solid favour, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below this video. If you're looking to remove images, videos, search results, or fake accounts online, go to contentremoval.com. But don't take my word for it. Here's some music.
Frank, you're a legend. I just saw this. Layla also thinks you're a legend, which in my mind means you're which means you're a double legend in my mind. If you get my wife to think you're a legend, then you're extra cool in my mind. Dude, thank you so much, genuinely. That was such a pain.
Welcome back to the Frankie Lee podcast. Today, guys, I have got you another absolute barnstormer. We've got the boys here from FREETRAIN who took the brand from 0 to 10 million inside 3 years. An absolute unbelievable story, and going to drop some unbelievable value on this podcast. We've got James, we've got Jack. Welcome to the show, boys.
Thanks for having us,
Nice to be here, Frankie.
Thank you for coming to the ghetto to record it. I appreciate it. But look, boys, you've had a phenomenal journey in the last 3.5, 4 years. And before that, because obviously you both started in the pro game. Obviously you played, I think you both played at Burton, but you played at Villa, didn't you, as well, Jack? So like, give me a bit of an insight into growing up, Jack, and obviously getting into football and kind of, and your passion for that.
I think, football was everything for me growing up. I joined the Villa at 7 and then ended up leaving there when I was 18. So I got released just before professional contract, and it literally was everything. Right from kind of day one, wanted to be a professional footballer, loved everything about it. And even, growing up, as you started to get a little bit older, it was just magic, My kind of upbringing through the Villa was brilliant. Some of the best facilities in the country. Villa were doing really well at the time, so it was just, it was seriously good. My first year as a scholarship, when we kind of went full-time, they had a brand new training facility, which was just magic, even at school. I think from like year 9, I used to do 1 day a week full-time with the Villa, which was just classy, doing like 4 days at school, which is like, again...
It's mental, isn't it? When you're like 7 or 8, you're getting 1 day off a week to go play football.
It's class. You used to train on a Monday night, stop over at a hotel, train all day Tuesday, and then back to school Wednesday. So it was wicked, Like, I wouldn't change it for the world, literally. And the lessons it taught me, it was wicked, went around Europe playing. We went on to Germany on tour, and then started my scholarship when I was 16. That was full time, so that's when it got like serious, which again was brilliant, looking back. But a lot of pressure involved, a lot of learnings that I have, with me day to day now, really. So it kind of it was everything. And then I left Villa when I was 18 and went to Burton Albion, where our journey started. And that was a real change, the first big change in my football career, really, because it went from kind of youth team, you're with a bunch of 18-year-olds, and then all of a sudden you're in the adult change room, signed a professional contract at Burton Albion. They were in League 2 at the time. And again, that was like a different form of pressure, because you're surrounded with, proper football now. You're playing on for 3 points on a Saturday, which was, again, a lot of pressure. And I think...
Because obviously you've just played reserves up until that point, right?
Yeah, it was youth team football and reserves, and which is great. Ironically, I felt there was more pressure in that, with kind of 30, 40 people watching on the sides, than going to Burton and playing in front of 3,000 or 4,000 people, men's football, which was crazy, really. And I think that was, from a number of things, really. But I always remember when I got released and I went to Burton, was kind of the first time where I thought, actually, I feel like the pressure's off a little bit here, because from 7 years old to 18 at the Villa, it was just very intense all the time. And then going to Burton, weight off my shoulders, and actually played my best football then, and had 4.5 years at Burton, which was brilliant, in League 2. And then, kind of the ship slowly started to go downhill, injuries and stuff like that. But in the first period of my life, football was everything really. And looking back now, so many lessons to take into the world that I'm currently in. And obviously a big thing in that was meeting my mate here.
Meeting the big man. And where did you start playing football?
So I started at Walsall. Talking about that earlier. And you know what? I think my background and Jack's background are two of the same, but almost completely different, because that was a little bit like the Wild West. A lack of facilities, kind of the last stop for a lot of young kids when they've been released by clubs. And I started there from the age of 8, and I've seen all manner of competition come in from different clubs and whatnot. And then, very similar journey. But I'd say the one thing about Walsall when I was coming through, there was that touch of, say, unprofessionalism, maybe old school. I'd be going in with the youth team from the age of 13, 14. And you talk about grounding. It was just incredible because, I mean, some of the pranks that were being pulled on a daily basis, you were around a training ground, you had to do the jobs like sweeping up the hallways, cleaning first teamers' boots, pumping up footballs, and if you didn't do that right, you would catch hell from the first team. Playing in the reserves, almost having to give up our pitch when the first team came. So one of the stories is when it used to snow, the first team would leave their training ground and come down to the stadium. We used to have to get the shovels and shovel the snow off the AstroTurf so they could train. And you'd look out the window and you'd see half the pitch of AstroTurf for the pros and then the other side of snow, which is where we train. And it was just carnage. But a very similar thing. I think the grounding that I had there and the toughness of it has almost set me up for the rest of my life, really.
For the business side and the element you have to go through. I mean, I want to ask you both what it's like, the day at these, because obviously you're both at these clubs, Aston Villa, Walsall respectively, similar area clubs, right? What's it like the day the manager pulls you in to tell you that you're both getting released?
Interesting. I remember mine like it was yesterday. I think, especially being there from such a young age, it's almost led up to the point where the big contract is the pro contract. So you've done your kind of youth team, had 2 years full time, which is brilliant. And then, it's all leading to that day. And I think in my age group, there was 13 of us. And I think they kept 3 on as pro contracts. They let like 10 of us go. And even in that, you're never sure how many they're going to take on as pro contracts. How full is the reserves? What are the first team looking for? And I thought I was going to get one. I suppose at that age, you think, well, I've had a good season. I've done well on my scholarship. Because you're not going to go straight into the first team. So maybe a couple of years in the reserves, get up to kind of 20 years old and then maybe into the first team. But walked into the academy director's office and I remember the exact words he said. It was, if it was based on attitude, we'd give you a 3-year contract. But on technical ability, we don't think you're good enough to play in the Premier League. And that was that really. Went back into the change room where all the lads were and we all kind of waited for each other. Everyone was going in individually and the 3 they kept on, amazing. And some of these lads you've been mates with from 7 years old. Some of you
are some of them playing big games now?
Nah, there's one lad still playing. He plays for Birmingham in the Championship. But weirdly, when we kind of got released, I was the only one to get back into a pro club. So I count my blessings on that because, to be completely honest, out of the 10 that got released, there was some better players than me in that, and it's so cutthroat because you get released, you think, well, sound, I'll drop down to the Championship or League 1, League 2, get another pro contract, and I'm on my way. Then that's what you all think, and it was a reality.
I knew I was fucked, to be honest. I had so my journey with Walsall. I had a coach called Mick Halsall, phenomenal coach, real great man manager, and I was a little bit of a wild card when I was a kid, but he just understood me. He let me be me. And like I say, I was just out the box, but I was expressive, just even in my ways. And then he left, he got the job at Wolves, and Dean Smith took over, and he was our youth team manager. And I think our personalities just clashed. I just probably wasn't his cup of tea, which is fairly understood. He was our youth team manager, and then he got the first team job. And the day that happened, it was like, right, well, this is it. Let's look for other alternatives. But you're kind of hopeful. I'd had a fantastic season in the youth team. I had a load of clubs kind of sniffing around me and stuff, which was brilliant. And I knew I backed myself as a player. So I kind of walked into that that meeting, and I was the first one in. And obviously all the other lads were down the bottom, and it's a similar story. You at Walsall, it was with the manager. I walked in that room and I'm going 3, 2, 1. You're not getting a contract, and it was as simple as that. I pretty much got up and walked out. I didn't want to listen to what they had to say, because I knew what they were going to say. They were talking about temperament and that sort of thing. But I think everybody's different, and I think you talk about the lessons that you learn. I take that into today's world. And we'd say some of our staff, everybody is different, and yes, they have to fit, but you have to respect people for being,
how they are,
how they are,
being their authentic selves, essentially.
Absolutely, yeah. And then so that I walked out of that room, knew the crack, and I went on trial to Brighton straight away, and they'd just gone up to the Championship, which was phenomenal, because I'd gone from, like I say, Walsall, where there was almost no facilities, and Brighton had just moved to the new training ground, the new stadium. I kind of just bounced into it. So to be honest, whilst I knew there was going to be a hard time, I also knew that there was a lot of opportunity out there as well, and I didn't want it to hold me back. The real kick in the teeth was Brighton, where I'd had a phenomenal pre-season. Me being a goalkeeper, I was in the top group for running. And to the point where the fitness coach was like, "Where are you going?" I was like, "I'm going off with the goalkeepers." He couldn't believe I was a goalkeeper. But yeah, I was in and around the first team. I did really well. I went into the office. Again, they told me exactly where I was going to live, the type of money I was going to be on, who I was sharing the house with. I've gone back to Birmingham on the Friday. On the Monday, they've called me. They've said, "Can't do this deal. We've just signed Craig McHale-Smith. We've thrown everything at it, and we've got to sell 2 or 3 players before we can even bring one in." And I remember having that phone call and the rage that went through me at the time in terms of dealing with that disappointment. I'd never had anything like that, and I've never experienced anything like that since in terms of personal disappointment. And that was just, like, I remember talking to my dad, and I was like spitting feathers about it. I couldn't understand why it had happened, why me, and that sort of thing. And to be honest, the aftermath of that continued for a good 3 months after. And when I say I went off the rails, I didn't drink up until this point. I started going out with my pals, I started drinking. I was going to the casino at about 10 p.m. at night and not leaving until closing time at 6 a.m. Just doing my bolt in the casino, sometimes coming out with loads of dough, going in the next night and then losing it all. And when I say I was off the rails, my first my dad knew someone who was at Burton who'd had a conversation with the goalkeeper coach. He was like, "Just come in and train." And my first training session at Burton, I'd been to the casino. I didn't get out of the casino until 4 a.m. And I've just rocked in, started training. But because I had nothing to lose, no weight on my shoulders, I trained really well. But again, I was still that box of frogs. But when you talk about sort of that real kick in the teeth of thinking everything's going to be great and you've done everything you can and you've ticked every box for that to the floor to cave in. I've had that experience of 3 months where my head had just completely gone and I was in a bad place. I didn't know how bad of a place it was at the time, but now I look back and I go, bloody hell, like I really could have gone down another road if it wasn't just for my dad picking up the phone and me training somewhere and them offering me a deal. But yeah, talking of, say, experiences setting you up for life, the Brighton experience was massive for me.
I think it's so much easier, isn't it, when you connect the dots going backwards for you to see why certain things happened in your life and how they kind of delivered you to this point in your life that you are now. And so what would your advice be then to people out there that have got these businesses, got these brands, trying to do things within sport? They're trying to, if you're trying, would your advice be, if they're trying to push, maybe just to pause and kind of ascertain whether they're trying to push him even in the right direction?
It's a good question. I think rather than going too deep on it, I think what we were speaking about earlier is just kind of, everyone says that they enjoy the process and stuff, but yeah, just understand that it is going to be a journey, whether that's from, playing football at 16 until now where we are. Along that, it was never like, this day switches off, I'm going to be a businessman now. It was just like, you think back the journey, and I'd just say, yeah, as long as you're applying yourself in the right way, in general, you've just got to appreciate the journey, because I mean, I believe that everyone is on a journey, and appreciate those moments in time as you're on that journey, really.
Yeah, and we were talking before the podcast about this book that I'm rereading. It's called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and if you guys haven't read it, like, you should 100% get involved in that book, because that book just gets you so present with where you are. You kind of really start to appreciate, and then when you start to really appreciate your whole life for where you are at now, it allows you to go to these new levels that you never even knew were possible. It's something that's helped me at this moment. I just wanted to tell you all to dial into that book. But you boys, then obviously you end up at Burton together. You're playing football. Obviously, you're just rocking up out of the casino, just fucking, you might have lost 10 grand or might have won 10 grand, whatever you've done. How did you kind of culminate into forming this relationship together and kind of becoming friends? Because like in football clubs, it's a little bit cliquey in some respects, especially with certain positions as well.
Yeah, I think we just kind of got thrown together, really. You kind of find out that you guys live in the same area, and then the senior pros just go, you two live close to each other. You're not getting paid much money. You can car share together. And it was literally as simple as that. And it's like anything, you don't know the beginning of any journey until you look back and you go, bloody hell, that was a moment, that was definitive. That was
pivotal, yeah.
Yeah. And I can't even remember who said, like, you two should travel in together. But, that happens. You meet up at McDonald's and you start jumping in the car, tunes go, and you start knowing the same people and whatnot. And then I think the biggest thing was almost like just having the same morals more than anything, you whether you've got the same interests, you just go, this guy's a good guy. And I think the one thing that we've always had is the truth will always be spoken. So if one of us had a bad game and it was like, what do you think of that? He was always like, well, you could have done this better, or I can see where the gaffer's coming from when this is said. Because if not, you're just fueling the fire, and that's when cliques and, dressing rooms crumble, or friendships are built on falsehood. Because if you're thinking one thing and saying another, at some point,
it's not congruent.
At some point the truth will come out. Yeah,
I think the congruency, like when you're obviously two founders coming together, as we know, there's been many famous founders, especially from Birmingham, that have like fell out and stuff along their journeys. Do you know what I'm saying? And things have had to be done different. But I think having that understanding that was built from you getting in the car, going to training together, and understanding each other, the mechanics of like, okay, this is how I pick you up from a bad day and a bad game, and this is how I pick you up from a bad game and a bad day. And it's kind of all those learnings, so that when you come together and you formulate these, start to talk about business, start to talk about ideas that you can work together with. Is that kind of how it felt?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I think, understanding each other when you're younger as well, because it was just so raw, wasn't it? We chucked in the car, and just to give people a little bit of context as well, because sometimes I think when you talk about like pro football, it's like, I mean, at Burton, it was a case of jumping in together in the same car to save fuel costs. I mean, my first contract at Burton was like 250 quid a week. I think sometimes people, or they may be listening, going,
and that's a pro contract.
Exactly, yeah. So it literally was, saving money and stuff. But I think you're dead right. It's kind of, learning what people are like in the early stages, and even in our relationship, you start to, what's his buzz, or how do you, like you say, pick someone up when they're down and stuff. And even when we used to travel in, there were certain things that were like so aligned and similar, and then other things which couldn't be different. Even the way we used to go into training and stuff, he'd be having a Lucozade and Mars bar on the way down to training, and I'd be like probably having my banana. And just even in that, it was like you were more out there, I was more, kind of, say, a bit more stable, really.
But that was the easy part, though, the football side of things, because you talk about this relationship and whatnot, because it was football and because we are of a similar mindset, that was easy to do. But I think the nuances start is when you kind of go into business. So the interesting thing is we've friends first before business. Yeah. But then when the business side starts and you do start spending a lot of time together, there have been altercations, there have been disagreements, and there have been really heated moments, and they probably happened at the start. And I think it's just where you iron out the relationship, and you push pull moments. I remember a time when we were so the way we funded the whole project was we were in schools, and we were teaching the lads football, and then we were doing fitness classes after school. And one of the days we just had this quote come back from this company, and we'd had a disagreement on the quote, whether we should go through with it or not. I think like the price was really high, and we were deciding which direction we should go within the business. And it'd gone on for a couple of days, and it had rumbled up to the point where, like, it was, we were the last car sitting on this car park, and it was like inches away from, a lack of a better word of saying, going off, really. But then you come away from those situations, you have conversations, then you articulate it, and then from that point you learn, right, well, this is the jump off moment, this is the point where if you're feeling a certain way, we got to put a pin in it, we've got to go our separate ways for half a day, come back to the drawing board, and if it happens again, you do the same thing. And the one thing that is the positive and the negative about this relationship is decisions take a while, because there's two sides, there's two thoughts, but we will not move forward until both of us are happy with the scenario. So yeah, in terms of the dynamics of the relationship and travelling in together, we've probably spent more time with each other over the last 10 years than any other human being in our circles or life.
Yeah, because no matter what happened in your day, at the start and the end of every day, you're in the car together reflecting on that and reflecting on what you've learned and reflecting on where you're going together. And like, you could have had a bad day, you could have had a good day. So you learn to process all those emotions together, don't you? Because in football, it's there's no middle ground. It's either you're elated and buzzing because you've won, you've got a place in the first team, or you've won that week, or you're in the shit because you've just been done 7-0 by someone else in a lower position than you. Do you know what I'm saying? There's no middle ground in stuff like that, is there?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing, but there are more lows than highs, especially when it comes to football. Or especially for me, we'd win on a Saturday, or you'd play well, and then I would enjoy the dressing room until you've had your shower, you've got your stuff on, and then it'd be shit. What about the next game? Am I going to play well the next game? Training, am I going to be in the team?
Yeah.
Some people, it might last for longer, but if you lose that game on that Saturday, you've got that negative feeling all the way up until you do something positive, and that was...
And the pressure as well, and you kind of, I suppose, pressurising each other on the way, on that journey there, like, we've got to win this week, you know what I mean? We lost last week, we got done 3-0, we got to, you kind of... you're the goalkeeper. What position were you playing?
Centre mid,
right? So it's like, there's a whole lot of pressure coming from different positions on the pitch. It's a dynamic you're literally sitting in the boiling pot, because if you make a mistake in the midfield and you put the defender and then the defender behind you puts someone on side, and then you're left carrying the bag, and then you've just been put one past.
Yeah,
it's like those kind of conversations now are causing stress in that car. It's like a whole dynamic that people don't even consider in that game. Yeah. But obviously, you boys, then you go on and you start talking about business and start to throw ideas around about how you can start making money. Because obviously, you boys must be thinking when you're travelling down to Burton, going, do you know what? We're driving all this way. Football, 250 notes each year. It's not really about it no more.
The thing with at Burton, there was still the opportunity that was still, we've got a chance here. The kind of business stuff came after we both left Burton. We actually joined back up at a non-league club, Nuneaton. Now, obviously, the friendship built, and we always had conversations around, like, the one common denominator was, like, we wanted to be great at something. We wanted to be, like, the best at something. And the reality was, unfortunately, at League Two, certainly from my point of view, as I started to see the decline, it was like, I don't think I'm going to play in the Premier League. I'm quite realistic. I can see other players in the league above, and I don't really think I'm better than them. And that was kind of... But the one thing is it's got to be in something, like, always had that hunger and determination and passion to not be average, really. That's, again, it's a bit of a quote, but, like, my biggest fear is, being average. I want to be the best at something. And that was almost like, as we transitioned to the next club, Nuneaton, it was like, come on, we have to think of something else, because now the chances of getting to the top league is, like, it's so slim. So we know we've spent a lot of time with each other now, we're good friends, like we've got this passion. What is that passion? And that's when we started spitballing different ideas. Well, what we're going to do.
And I suppose you boys were on a year contract to Nuneaton at the time, I suppose.
Yeah, but that was terrible, being honest. And I think it's the first time we kind of, and from my side of things, that has always been the mindset, to be the best, to win. So if I get beat, coming back to beat you again. And then we get to Nuneaton, and where you had that goal of training every single day, you're training twice a week. Whether you've been at Graft in the day, and then you're in the car and it's like 6 o'clock, or the training ground's not great, or a lot of these lads, it's last chance saloon for them, or it's the end of the line. The professionalism or the want to kick on just wasn't there for a lot of people. And that was the realisation, because if you really strip myself back and you say, at that stage, did you still think you could be the best? Absolutely, yeah. But
as soon as that goes, it's like, what's the point?
Yeah, you're out of there. You are out of there. And then it was the whole, thinking about the amount of hours we had in the day. I don't think we had sort of part-time jobs at the time, but we were going, say this Monday to Friday, and we're only training Tuesday, Thursday, playing on a Saturday. What else can we do? And we had countless amounts of ideas. Some ideas have gone out there and made millions of pounds, like portable blenders. One of the first things we wanted to do was like renovating houses, so buy a rundown house, do it up and sell it, just because we said the one asset that we have is time. And we tell everybody that, especially young footballers. We probably wish we'd have started when we were 18, but we had time to go and paint walls in a house or go and look at carpets and that sort of thing. So it was that whole idea about, this avenue is blocked, where's the next one? And again, with that, we had massive plans. We were thinking about, the end goal was to buy plots of land and build houses,
Yeah.
So it was never just we'll do this on the side. It was whatever we throw ourselves into, it is to do it mega, it is to do it at the top level. And if that doesn't happen with football, if it's a throwaway, we've got to do it with something else. And that's essentially the driving force to get us to where we are with FREETRAIN, really.
I love it, but there's a few things that failed along the way to you finding FREETRAIN and obviously getting all that up to there. What kind of things did you try that didn't work out for you?
The first thing we tried, Jay just touched on it, was the housing thing. So we thought we'll buy a house, or we'll try and use someone else's money to buy a house and do it up and sell it on. Keep the profits, bit of
Grant Cardone, boys.
Yeah.
Go on.
And that was that. And we'd even from day dot, it was like, well, let's put a little plan together, like little A4 sheet. Well, what do we need? Well, paint's £100, and like new kitchen's going to be this. Just almost like we always had together. We could knock ideas off each other and say, what about this? And it was all like, yeah, good idea. Let's run with that for a little bit. And we didn't really. There was together. There was that mindset to go, like, we're just going to do it. And we never really shut each other down. It was like, let's just move forward with it. And yeah, it was like, well, of course we can get a house. Like, there's loads of them for sale. They're cheap. We need some money to do it. How are we going to do that? And that was the first thing. We tried to put a business plan together in terms of pricings, costings, and we knew, let's say, for example, if there was 20 grand profit in it, well, to someone with the right amount of money, surely if we can give them a little profit share on it, they can take 5 grand. It's better interest than they're going to get in the bank, and we'll split the rest, but we'll do all the work. But we do need some money to do that. So if we put a plan together and it's solid, surely we can present this plan to someone who's got the right wealth, and they can go, all right, lads, I believe in your vision. That was the first thing that we tried to do.
And when you're putting together these deals and finding these houses that you thought would be profitable, what kind of happened from there?
Well, again, we were completely stupid, because we went bull at a gate thinking someone's going to give us a load of dough, and because we've got time in the day, we'll do it. We're looking at 300 grand barn conversions and going, yeah, we'll just extend on the back. Literally, we had that sort of mentality and that mindset of things are unlimited. You can do this. There was I think the way to describe it is there's no fear. And then, you kind of speak to people and they pull you back and they go, well, start slowly. Start with just like the stuff that you can manage yourselves and whatnot. And, it was literally just almost starting. And I suppose we've got this with FREETRAIN now. It's start with the biggest, brightest vision and work backwards and work back to the starting point. What is feasible, what is doable for now. So that's essentially where we ended up. We ended up at a house that just needed a lick of paint and a new kitchen and bathroom. But again, we were, in hindsight, probably too young. We were still sort of 19, 20 at that time. And the guy we were going to borrow the money from looked at it and went, lads, listen, you're just too young. And that was, to be honest, that was another massive blow for us. But we had that thick skin or that mentality to go, right, we'll go again. The next idea was a portable blender, knew nothing about electronics, had a good idea for it. But the real kickstart of FREETRAIN was an app. And again, a stupid idea of an app. We thought we could compete with the likes of Instagram. I think MySpace was sort of coming to its death then. And Facebook. And what we wanted to do was create like a fitness hub. But it was a rip-off of Instagram. We didn't see it at the time. We thought, this is the best app in the world. It's going to have its nutrition side of things here, its exercise side of here, mindset here, like local gyms here. And we sat there with this lad, and it was very, very like grassroots in terms of sitting there with a mind map of you're going to click through here, and then it's going to be this, and then it's going to be that. And again, we realised the effort that it would take to get there was going to be astronomical. We went to see an app developer, and he said, yep, no problem, lads, we can build this. It's starting off at 40 grand. You can imagine the first thing then, shit, what do we do? So, again, us being the way that we are, we thought, right, we've got to do something. We've got to sell something physical. And at that point, it was, do we sell clothes? Everyone's selling clothes. Do we sell our knowledge? So do we do football stuff? Thinking 40 grand, that's going to take a while to get to. And then it just so happened that as we were spitballing these ideas, it was close season where we were running and training and thinking, right, got to get fit for the new season. And I remember exactly where I was at this time. I was sat on the field, we were on the phone, and we'd been for a run the day before. And it was like, oh, why don't we come up with something to hold your phone? And we were inspired by all the things we knew, like the Stat Sports vests, what people wear.
Yep.
He was like, right, let's do something that you can wear and let's make this thing for ourselves. And when we got to that point of making something that was perfect for ourselves, we could stand behind it. We went to see people. People tried to pick holes in it. They couldn't pick holes in it. And we knew then that we really had something.
Because wasn't there a moment as well, because through that, after you kind of, you made the rudimental design on the field through trial and error and stuff like that, and you kind of, I think one of your nans or something knit the vest or something like that. So I was reading about it. One of your nans like sewed it up or whatever. But there was a pivotal point where you were on a sales call because you were doing a sales job to supplement your football, weren't you, Jack? And then yes. you turn up at this random house and you knock on the door to sell this whatever bullshit you were selling, and it just so happened to be the head of product design at Adidas.
Yeah, massive part in the journey, really, because we believed in it. And it was almost like we needed someone else to say, lad, you're really on something here, because it was an invention. There was nothing out there like it. So I went along on this sales call, kind of doing my job and stuff, and he says to me in the house, yeah, I'm just retired from Adidas, head of product development for 22 years. So I'm thinking, wow, beautiful house in Shrewsbury. I think he'd done very well for himself by the looks of it. He'd headed up, I think he said, 700 employees in China for about 13 years. So he was clued up, this guy was. So luckily managed to do the deal. And then I said, look, I've got to kind of show you this idea. Showed him the idea, and he was like, that's brilliant. And I said, okay, well, I'd love to come back. I want to come back with my business partner, and we want to show it you properly. So obviously spoke to Jay, and then we literally went back a week later, kind of said to him, look, shouldn't really be saying that on the sales call, but again, just take the opportunity, like what's the worst that can happen? So I went back round, and then we presented the idea properly. And he literally couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe that this product hadn't been out there before. No one was doing it. And his first words were, "That's genius." And I think the level of kind of expertise he had in that field, product development at Adidas, that was one of the first times where we went. It's not just us that thinks that. That's real validation that this is a serious product. And he loved the idea of it, talking about the vest itself, how symmetrical it was. It wouldn't affect runners' kind of imbalancing as soon as they go over like 5K. The knowledge he had was like unbelievable. And he was like, it's such a simple idea. You've solved the problem of where do you put your phone when you run, which for us was just brilliant, because that was like, well, we can do this. We've had a little nod off someone say, you're onto something, lads, let's run with it. I mean, ironically, one of the things he said is, Adidas will buy this off you straight away. So again, we're probably 6 months into this, trying to fund it ourselves, doing the kids coaching at schools, doing these prototypes and stitching them, cutting them out of tops and stuff, getting it to the stage where we think actually that works now. Could we just sell this idea to Adidas?
What did he kind of say that Adidas would have paid for that idea?
He didn't say anything at the time, but there was, we've seen like the Predator football boot that was designed by someone, sold the rights to Adidas and stuff. And, it was the big thing in that is we hadn't even started our journey. And I think the one thing we wanted to do at the start was get the protection around the product, which we had. But Adidas wouldn't sign a non-disclosure for us to send them the product. So essentially, if we'd have sent it to Adidas and they'd have gone, we fancy doing this, lads, at that stage of our, journey, we'd have had a hard, battle, telling them to stop, really.
Yeah, so basically, if you'd sent it, even though patented.
Yeah, we were still, at that time, we were still in the process. And you can imagine that's it was a make or break moment, really, for us to turn down Adidas, essentially. But you think we were toying with the idea of selling it, but you do the maths on the amount of runners there are worldwide, and you see what the royalties the guy from Predator made, or the guy who invented the Predator made. So it's almost a case of having to turn down a ready-made thing there. We were looking at percentages of sales and whatnot, and we didn't know what that would be. And we're thinking, right, we're going to have to get suited and booted, fly over to Germany and see these guys. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things for us, where we've had to pat ourselves on the back and say we've had to have some balls to turn down Adidas and go, no, we're going to do it ourselves, because, like we say, we're still in that process of really shoring up the IP. And yeah, it was just that jump off point, whether we trust a big organisation like Adidas or we do it ourselves. And
his reaction as well was everything, because if he'd have said, "Oh, yeah, that's a decent idea," but he was like, "This is genius." And I think
and obviously he's probably talked to his friends inside Adidas to get you the meeting, so they know they wouldn't be sitting that meeting if they didn't think they were going to. He's probably told them on the phone that this product's a good product. Like, you've got to get this product.
Yeah,
but
do you know what? As well, I have to say to him, he was brilliant with us, because he could have shafted us. He could have said, "Right, guys." He could have told them the idea, but he wanted to help us as people, which is, And you talk about the journey and the people you meet along the way. We could have run into the troll under the bridge, and we never. We actually. He said, I remember him saying to us, "This is like unbelievable, the fact that they won't sign anything," and he kind of gave us that reassurance to go, "No, we're making the right decision." And
I think you need in life, all through your life, especially in business, you meet guides, and these guides that you meet some guides that teach you a lesson and lead you into a bad spot, and you have to learn from that. And then you have guides that unlock doors to whole new dimensions that you've never seen in business before. And I think this just gave you the encouragement to protect the idea, didn't it? Because I don't think the idea was protected when you initially went to him, was it?
We're in the process of it, but even at the day one, it was like, we are self-funding this ourselves. We're doing the coaching. We're trying to get the cash to make prototypes and stuff. So we're having conversations and ended up doing it. But at that time, it was like, well, that ain't going to be like dirt cheap. That's going to be a couple of grand to start this process. But we were aware of it. So.
What did it cost you to protect the idea back in the day?
Overall, about $5,000 when you take everything into consideration.
Which I imagine at the time that you're doing it was a lot of cash to you.
It was near enough everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of, do you remember back to that conversation, whereas, you sat there as these two founders who think they've created this brand, but you've actually physically not gone and sold loads of units, so you don't know if you've got a brand yet, but you sat in the car going, we can't release this until we've protected it, otherwise we're going to get flawed with it. How did that conversation go? How did you kind of feel? Was there any lack within you, like, oh, can we even do this?
No, I think the one thing we have to commend ourselves for is we're very brave with the things that we do, and there are sometimes shortcuts, and I'm sure we'll speak about them later on, some of the things that have cropped up, but everything that we ever do kind of goes through the ringer. Again, I can't remember exactly, but there were reservations between us whether we should just go for it and do it anyway, which would have been a brave decision, but we talk everything through all the time, and you know, I think we have that moment where we'll look at each other, and we used to spend hours in David Lloyd's. We'd do a gym session and we'd sit there for 3 or 4 hours after. And you know, we'd kind of get to that point and push each other on and G each other up to the point where it's, no, well, fuck Adidas. We can do this ourselves. If it's that good of an idea, the cream will rise to the top. And we took that decision to go, do you know what? We're going to have a go at it ourselves.
We believed in it massively. Yeah. And I think that's a great thing of a lesson to, or even just if you can have someone around you that you can voice things to and just bounce ideas off. Because if that was like individual mindset, you might have listened to that conversation with the Adidas guy and gone, God, well, I've got to take that. But always having two of you, the amount of times we've taken a step back and really discussed things and like, nah, that's the right decision.
I think having two of you, like, although it can cause dramas, it's also very good to have that sounding board, because you can almost talk yourself out of some of the brave decisions that you can make in your life and not move through certain things because you have that doubt, you have that fear. And I've always found, for me, on the other side of the fear, on whatever's most painful is always the most growth, you know. And I think with this for you, it's like it was painful dropping $5,000 on the pattern, but at the end of the day, if you don't do that, you've got nothing. So you've come all that way. You've done, your nan's been sewing it. Like you gotta just risk it for a chocolate biscuit. And what's $5,000 in the grand scheme of things in life? Do you know what I'm saying? You have to roll the dice. But you then get this pattern, and you've got this thing now. So now you know you're protected. What was kind of the next plan of attack? Because didn't you start producing them in the UK?
Yeah, Wolverhampton, literally just down the road. So again, we've the amount of experience that we amassed over the 2 years of idea to actually getting them made was just phenomenal. So the factory actually came about by us working with these development companies all the time, and that's a story within itself, because the amount of people that have either tried to rob us or take us down a different path with their own views of the idea has been a journey within itself. I mean, it took us 2 years, when if we'd have found this factory in Wolverhampton to begin with, it probably would have taken us 3 months, based off our idea being tweaked, based off people saying they can do this and they can't do that. We went through 4 product development companies who took us so far and then took us back 3 steps. And then we met this factory in Wolverhampton with this lovely girl called Gina, who you just pick up the phone to, and she'd make us sample after sample. We'd get it, we'd wear it, we'd tweak it, to the point where we knew exactly how many units we'd get from a sheet of neoprene. We had to kind of take different materials or take different inspiration off other ideas, and then we'd be speaking to these factories in China at 2 a.m. in the morning, and they'd be sending all the components over, and then we'd have the components come over to the UK, and then we'd had like a roll of neoprene. We were running out, and then we finally got the final product. And then at that point, we just had to go and get these phone cases made in China sent to the UK. We had the neoprene come over, and then we took the neoprene to another factory in West Bromwich, and the guy was phoning us up going, "You're going to have to come and get your stuff. It's killing all my staff, the smell of the fumes," because they hadn't aired out the ink dye. But so China just sent it over. They hadn't let it air. This guy's brought it in the factory, and he had to send half his workforce home. And we're like 22, 23. And he's going, "You're going to have to come and get your stuff." We're going, "Please, mate, we're so close." And then finally we talked him round, and he got them dyed. He got them cut for us. And then we had to go and pick them up in this little like shoddy van, drive it over to Wolverhampton. And then they knocked out 500 for us. They took all the components and made it. In about the space of 4 weeks. It was incredible. We had these 500 vests sitting in our houses going, right, well, how the bloody hell are we going to sell these?
So you literally got them made, and you just didn't have any idea once you got them made how you were going to sell them, how you were going to market them or anything. It's just literally like go all in on the pattern and go all in on the manufacturing. So you were shipping in the components then from a Chinese factory. How did you go about sourcing the right neoprene from the factories, and how did you go about sourcing the right phone cases and stuff?
I was going to say that before you asked that question, that the ironic thing is, in that like 2 years, or let's say from like idea 1.5 years to having those 500, we had like no experience in anything. So for example, nothing in engineering, nothing in materials, what's the right plastic clip or neoprene. You know, you get experts in these fields where go, this is the type of neoprene you need. And because it was something we couldn't just send off and say, like, make this, we had to keep our cards close to our chest because, you know, we were scared of someone like running off with the idea. So
because that's why I presume you got it made as the vest and you got it made as the phone case, and then you're bringing it into one location to sew it together because you didn't want to give China the whole product because obviously that was still the idea, right?
Yeah. Well, that's a funny story within itself. That we went to when we went out to China and we'd had them made in the UK and it was still sort of under wraps, and we thought, right, we're going to get this mass produced. We had to split the product in two. And it was only when we got to China we actually thought about the idea. So we got to the room. We had this itinerary on like a scrappy piece of A4 paper, and we thought, what if we show these guys this idea and they nick it, and we get back. By the time we get back to the UK, the market's flooded with our invention because, you know, they play by different rules to how we play here. So essentially, it was about weeding out the one that we wanted to work with. So again, just kind of being a bit inventive, we'd tear the phone case off the shell and we'd go in with the shell and we'd say, we've made this harness here to put a light on. Can you make this? And because we knew that the phone case had already come from China, we knew that they can make them anyway. And we'd just get that cost and that price of that product and then the price of the phone case. We said, how much do you make these phone cases for? We just put two and two together. And then eventually we kind of whittled it down, but we go into these factories and these factories would be awful places, some of them, because you just don't know. We've got no experience. We've just found these factories through people, through Alibaba, and just, you know, kind of used our nose to find them. But you go in some of these places and we'd walk out going, before we'd even walked out, we'd be around the table, but you just know we'd be going, we cannot make our product in this factory, make money from it in the UK, and these people are catching hell in this factory. There is just no way we can do it. And it's probably one of the best things we ever did, because if they're treating the workforce like that, what the hell can they do to us in terms of ripping us off? So essentially, that was probably the hardest thing about going to China, is finding the right person for us where you can build a relationship of trust with.
Can you just talk into what some of these Chinese factories are like and what some of these people go through?
Just awful working conditions. So, like, you know, most times you go and meet the there's some gems in this as well, because I think these days I think it's very easy to OEM stuff, or, you know, there's a lot more knowledge on how to get things made now. It's like you can send a sample off to Alibaba or someone in China and you get it back, and you don't actually go and experience these things. But because we had to go out there, you know, when you meet the factory boss or the owner, and it's, you know, a bit of conversation around what you guys doing here. This is what our factory can do. Let's take you around. Let's have a look. And then, you know, you're at these manufacturing plants, and you go around, and some of them, you go into the main factory hall where they've got the sewing machines and stuff, and it's awful. You know, the lighting's bad, the temperature's ridiculous. They're so close and working together. And, you know, thinking back now, looking back, it was such an eye opener to us, and we'd be walking around thinking, nah, like, this ain't happening. We got to get out of here, because we're not gonna choose to make this product in these conditions. And the original manufacturers, still our manufacturers today, was the best by a country mile on all fronts. Yeah.
So when you say, like, can you see the unhappiness in these people's faces as well when you're walking around, bro?
Yeah. Without a doubt, you walk around and some of these people won't even look at you, or they'll look at you thinking, what, here's another one who's going to add extra onto the workforce. We go in some places there'd be no windows, and I think it's difficult, because one thing that I think we should mention is there are a lot of good people in China, and there are some fantastic factories. There's also some really bad ones. The one that we went to, they had their workforce living on site, and you almost had to walk past a cesspit to go to their living quarters, which was just, like I say, an eye opener. You don't see that here in the UK, and you actually realise, you know, there's a documentary, isn't there, on clothing manufacturing called The True Cost, and I think that's about sort of the environment and whatnot. But the true cost of people is just phenomenal, and, you know, the finger might be pointed to say, well, you're making products in China. There is still an element of balance in terms of, okay, it might be cheaper to make something in this place, but it's not the cheapest, because we're not choosing the cheapest. And the reason why we're not choosing the cheapest is because our success cannot be built on the shoulders of people less fortunate than us, or people that are catching hell because of us. And yeah, it's that's
because I bet you had no idea of what you were walking into when you went out there. Because obviously the reason you went out there is I think we probably skipped this bit, but after you sold the 500 units and you knew you kind of had something, you're like, right, we've got to get this made, I presume, but we can't make it here because it's too expensive now. Because I think
it was ridiculous.
What were your costs back
making it in the UK? It used to cost us about 17 quid. So we were selling the vest for 20 quid. So straight away, business 101, you think, well, that ain't going to last for long. But we had to get these materials in from different places and ship them in and stuff, and then pay the UK manufacturer to make them. It just wasn't sustainable. Plus, the other thing as well is we found through the research and stuff that out in China, they actually specialise in these types of materials, the things that we were trying to make. For example, in the process of making them in the UK, the phone case itself, we couldn't make in the UK. We went to multiple manufacturers. We just couldn't seem to get it done of the quality that the typical phone armband is made in that you might order off Amazon. And that was almost like that had to be of a good quality because it's holding your phone. And we just couldn't get that done in the UK because they specialise in these things, inevitably where we went to get it manufactured.
And do you have to be, I suppose you have to be so careful, don't you? Because like you don't want to put poisonous neoprene on people's arms. So it's like, even how did you go about checking that the product that they're even producing, even if the factory's good, how do you go about checking a product like that for make sure it's not going to put rashes on people's arms and stuff like that? What's the kind of process with that?
Well, we had a guy who originally sourced us the neoprene, a guy called Peter. Honestly, never met him in our life, but I think he's from like Oxford way. And we just pick up the phone and go, Peter, like, how do you get neoprene in the UK? Where's this, where is this stuff made? And he was like a middleman. He used to work with these neoprene manufacturers, loved his surfing, so obviously the wetsuits and whatnot. And he just introduced us to a load of factories who produce neoprene. And he'd say, if you ever need anything, just come to me, and I'll get it tested for you. So,
how did you end up meeting him?
I think we phoned up a wetsuit manufacturer in the UK and we said, look, we need to make some neoprene. How do you go about it? And then they put us in touch with Peter. Literally picked up the phone and didn't know a thing about it, and just shows you, as long as you're brave enough to pick up the phone and ask somebody a question, 8 times out of 10 somebody'd be willing to help you.
I think half the things that stop a lot of people who listen to this podcast from launching brands or from scaling above their comfortable position they are now is like literally like picking up the phone and asking someone that's got more knowledge than you a question. Invariably, what you're taught as a child is you're taught that these rich people are horrible and all this kind of stuff. Whereas I've found the more wealthy people are, the more giving they are. The more time they can give you, the more they'll help you. A lot of wealthy people have really helped me and advised me all throughout my life that for different things. I'm like, fuck, I've learned more there in 2 minutes than I would have learned if I'd tried to do that for 3 months by myself.
You know why though? Because it's human nature. It is built within the human to pass on knowledge. You think about, say, you take away the civilization for the last 1,000 years. People would be sitting around a campfire teaching people how to hunt, teaching people how to cook, all of these things. It is inherent in humans to pass on information, and I think we do forget that sometimes. Everybody loves to talk to somebody and let them know how smart they are. So why are we not capitalising on that? Why are we not picking up the phone? I mean, if one of our competitors wants to pick up the phone and ask us, that's a different kettle of fish. But 9 times out of 10, somebody on the come up, it's a real form of flattery to us when somebody asks us, can we help them? And we sing like canaries half the time.
Not taking no for an answer as well. And I don't want these to sound like cliche things, but I think it is so true. Like asking questions, and if you don't get the response you want off some individual or company, or you're looking for advice, there's lots of resources out there, and we would just literally just kick down these doors. And that is it. Simple. Like all we would do, just not take no for an answer. That we didn't get that answer we wanted. Let's move on to the next one. We ordered these. The running armbands off Amazon, and it was like, let's say there's 3 of them, three of these kind of like just brands on Amazon. Well, let's find out where these manufacture and let's contact them. Can you make this phone case with the arms cut off? We just want to make the phone case, and then can you put our branding on? yeah, no problem, we can do that. Or what's the price? And it's like, we got to get a phone case made. We have no clue how to do it. Let's order some of them off Amazon, and then let's see if we can contact them to help them make a FREETRAIN one that we can get sent to the UK and we can put on the vest in Wolverhampton. Just don't take no for an answer. Keep going until you get the outcome.
And I think a lot of it comes down to just find the way. Like whatever way you got to find to get things done, you just got to get it moving and just one step, isn't it? One step. It's like with this podcast and everything I'm trying to build with it and trying to cultivate with it. It's like just do one more podcast, one more. It doesn't have to be fucking rocket science. You don't have to reinvent the wheel half the time, do you? But I think people just kind of miss that whole point. And when I was reading, and I want to go back to this because it's so important, relevant to this, but when I was reading The Power of Now the other day, I realised that 90% of the time my mind was either thinking about building the biggest fucking education podcast in the world or something in the past that pissed me off. And when you get real present with it and you get real granular in focusing on this current moment and just focusing on being present in this conversation with you two right now, even though at this moment no one's listening to this conversation because it's not even out yet, it's like that is the juice. That's where all your joy is. And as humans, we are constantly future pacing our joy in terms of like our joy comes when we get to here, over here. And then when we get there, we're like, well, fucking now our joy's moved fucking 10 steps ahead. And also we're thinking about, hang on a minute, Shirley down the road here pissed me off fucking 3 days ago and I'm still thinking about it. Whereas you should have left that with Shirley that day. It's like, and as humans, we get it so confused and we don't live in the now. The more present you get with everything that you do, that is the freeness that a lot of people are looking for that they can't experience.
We've got a collection and it is based off that, and not necessarily to the exact degree, but it's that word or those two words, flow state, of just being in that almost present moving moment all the time, and it's the most free you'll ever feel. When you asked that question earlier about how do you deal with failure, the answer for me is the same as with success. You just roll with the punches, you keep going, you stay within that moment. Now, I think we will all agree, whether you play sport, whether it's business, whether you're making food, when you get in that moment of just flowing with what's happening at the time, it's the freest, most natural you'll ever feel. And when you feel free, you do feel happy, and it's not cooking your dinner today, thinking about what you're going to eat tomorrow. It is working on this thing here and now.
Yeah, and just being in it and being ingrained in it. Like when you were making that vest and when you were putting these components together and when you're thinking about ideas, you've not got anything else on your mind because everything else leaves you, and that's when you know you're on the right path. That's why as soon as I felt that way when I put down this first initial podcast, I was like, holy fuck, I've not felt that in that depth for forever. Like, okay, now I get, because people have talked to me. I've talked to a lot of successful people. Even when I was just doing contentremoval.com, I was talking to all these celebrities, right? And I'm removing online content for them, and I'm asking them questions. Like when I'm on the phone, I'm like, so and I'm picking their brains and the commonality when I look back at those conversations was like, the reason they're so free is because they've connected the monetization with something that they found purpose with, and they put it together and they've created this something that banged from that. And it just, when you start to put these things together and start to do it, but you cannot put the monetization piece in until you first find the bit that brings you the peace and allows you to be in the moment. And what people try and do is they try and go from being this unconscious human where they just going through daily life, living the 9 to 5, just doing that until ecom brand owner doing 5 mil. But they miss the part in the middle, which is like, hang on a minute, you haven't brought yourself fully in alignment with finding any pleasure or any joy in that moment that you're in right now. And that's the disconnect I find with a lot of humans. They kind of miss it. And I think you boys didn't even potentially realise at the time that when you were sat there in the moment doing, and you didn't know whether fucking FREETRAIN was going to work or whether this fucking vest was going to work, but you were just present.
Yeah, but no, I said then we did, but it's just because we just believed, and I know that this again sounds like a bit preachy and whatnot, but when we came up with this product, and as we were spitballing and the idea came out there, and even if it wasn't the finished article, what it was is if, you know, we could take this thing into any room and we knew it had passed the fire test. So any question that anyone would have, we'd say, well, here's your answer. This is why.
I like you correcting me on that, because it's the same. It's the same with this. Like, I know this is going to work. In my head, I know. I don't know how it... But what I meant by that was, I know it's going to work, and I'm sure you'll resonate with this. I know it's going to work. I don't know the timeline of how it's going to work in. That's what I meant. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like you knew that FREETRAIN was going to work for you, and it was going to be this thing that you had envisioned it to be. But the one thing that you can't control when you have these visions in your mind is you can't control the timeline it lands in. Yeah. And that's what people always try and control. They try and control the timeline, not just the event happening. Yeah. And I think that's why people sometimes quit 3 feet from gold, because they thought, this should have took 3 years. Well, it might take 5.5. Yeah. You just don't know, do you? Yeah. I think that's the power of it.
100%. 100%. I mean, we're kind of going through it now. Again, our plan was always the plan, and I think we've executed it with time almost perfectly. We've had kicks in the teeth where certain things have been kicked down the road, like the launch of the apparel. But essentially what we do know is we believe in the brand, we believe in the culture of it, we believe in the product. And yeah, we can't, that's the one thing that we've had to really learn, is we can't affect the speed of how this travels. And, you know, we've had conversations that we thought something would happen off the back of it the next day. They are uncontrollable, but as long as you believe in that end result and you keep moving forward to that end result, you will get there.
It's just about constantly putting things in your pipeline of whatever your vision is. If you keep putting things in the pipeline, eventually these things are going to slot into place wherever they slot into place, and it'll be right for you and it'll be right timing. But in that journey, obviously you go and develop this in China, you bring it back, you're now mass producing it. I suppose it really was not only just right product, but right time, because you launched it off the back of like the 2020 COVID. Everyone's at home, gyms are shut, everyone's out there running. You launched this, you kind of launched this vest into this kind of real hungry market now, and you go and sell what, £3 or £4 million worth of vests, or?
Yeah, so that had certainly helped, and the time, I think timing is a real big thing. You know, you hear or listen to a lot of entrepreneurs or successful people. I think a lot of them say timing is key. You know, i.e. when we had certain ideas and they didn't work, maybe the timing wasn't right. But we believed in this from day one, and I think, you know, even going out to China, we never thought that COVID was going to happen and there was going to be lots of runners. To be honest, when it first came about, we thought, have we just made the worst choice of our life? Because we quit our full-time jobs on the Boxing Day of 2019. And that was a decision where we'd been doing it part-time. This is after we got back from China. We'd had, 5,000 made, turned up at our houses with, loads of boxes, fulfilling them from our lounges, all times of the night, all times of the day, around other jobs, just hustling it basically, which was class when you think back now. Yeah. Like, there's some magic in that.
I bet you wish you'd vlogged it as well. Like.
We've got a lot of footage that we just haven't put out there for whatever reason. But yeah, I suppose in this day and age, a vlog to go alongside of it would have been unreal. But there was we got to the point where it was that busy and it was that like, what's going to happen with it? So we're going to go for it. We'd always obviously wanted to do it full time, and we rang each other and literally said, let's give this 6 months, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And then we both quit our jobs just like that. Then into the following year, in January, COVID comes around. There's this virus coming from China. Have we just made the worst choice ever? People talking about lockdowns and stuff. As a new business, you're thinking, well, we've stuffed it then, haven't we? Ironically, that a lot of people started exercising then, and when Mr. Johnson came out and said we advise everyone to go for a jog, the gyms are closed. I mean, it was brilliant because the macro demand for running just went through the roof, and ironically, we had the product that everyone was wearing.
It's brilliant, and you kind of like used the influencer route and stuff and put it on football players. I know some of your mates from football started wearing it locally and stuff, so you got the contacts there. So even though I think your first 500 units, you started to put them on players in the game.
Yeah, so I think it was it was when we really had a go in 2019, just before we decided to quit our jobs. And I said to you before, it's such a crazy story, and again, it's almost like it's a bit preachy to some degree, but it's not, because it's so true and so real. We just believed in this product, and I think when we started and resources were really low and we had to use ourselves as the models and we're taking pictures on iPhones, this is when Instagram was all about the high photography side of things and the high classy stuff. We couldn't give this vest away. There were micro influencers of 1,000 people saying, "No, you're all right, thanks," or they go, "Yeah," or "I'm in a deal with so and so, I can't wear it." And then we thought, right, well, we're going to go closer to home, and there's people in and around the areas that we kind of grew up with and who we played football with, and we got it on the likes of Barry Bannon and James Morrison. And all of a sudden, the players in that team start seeing that product and they start wearing it. And then we started to build that traction sort of January, February. We ended up being in GQ magazine whilst we were in China, and we opened this magazine. It's like, bloody hell, here we are.
Well, you didn't even know you were going to be in GQ?
Didn't even know. And it was like...
No, we weren't paying for weren't paying to be in there or anything.
That is mental that you boys got in GQ and you haven't paid for a placement or nothing.
It was mental. It was like their top running products, and we were like number one at the time. Still got the article. And the recognition, and you could just feel this thing happening. And then obviously lockdown happened, and it just opened up the floodgates to all of these people who needed to run. But essentially, what we had was a product that worked. We didn't have to pay for any influencers whatsoever, because it was such a no-brainer. I run, I take my phone, put this product on, it's cool, it's something that I can take a photograph in. And it just went from person to person. We were going out to celebrities and footballers going, "Can we send you one?" And they were going, "I've already bought one. I've bought one for me, my missus and the kids." And it was like, we were trying to, it's the complete reverse. We were trying to give them away and people already had them. And then it was, I think we were working with an agency at the time, and they went, "You do realise you've had £500,000 worth of influence or £500,000 worth of media that you've just got for free because, your product is so good." And then obviously we just kind of rolled with the punches, but we always had this plan of the apparel. And then all
the pain that you'd gone through in terms of like how long it took you and how long you'd had to just focus on reiteration of the product. Now all that was starting to pay you back, because people try and rush out products all the time, substandard products, but substandard products end up where all substandard products end up, on the as a fly by night, as something that doesn't repeat sell. But I suppose now you've got something that's patented that can be evolved into different versions, and you've got a good base of cash flow from your hero products. So now you can invest in the clothing, and that all came from your relentless design, right?
100%, yeah. I think the other thing as well is it was a universal, like worldwide as well. So because it wasn't like the product just worked for anyone who wanted to do any form of movement. We had like cyclists in it, walkers, runners, boxers, and this was like in all different countries as well. So within like the first 6 months, we'd set up 3PLs in Germany, Canada, Australia, America, and it was like...
How many did you sell in Australia?
Australia, I think we probably did about 7,000 in 2 years.
Yeah.
And that was the weakest of...
We were playing at it, though, weren't we?
That was literally just like, by the way, Facebook guy, just send a few ads to Australia. That was literally it.
$10 a day.
Yeah, literally.
We couldn't we had no like influencers because we didn't have the manpower or the team to go, let's focus on Australia.
It's a perfect country though for this type of product.
Yeah.
Like having lived over there for so long, like it's just a perfect product for that kind of country.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. I think the whole thing with COVID, we've had some people kind of throw that thing at us. Oh, well, COVID helped you, this and that. It was also a massive hindrance because we had no idea the scale of Australia at the time, or we couldn't get out on the ground and meet people because we were stuck in our offices at home or our bedrooms at home, going on the phone every day. We didn't know the impact we'd had in Germany, the impact we'd had in the US. It was a hindrance, and I think you just alluded to a point earlier about sort of the plan and having the cash flow to go into other things. We'd always had this plan, and before the vest was even launched, we knew where we were going next, and that was apparel.
So you went niche first, to get the cash flow in the business, and then your plan was to go more broad because you needed to diversify, right?
Yeah,
because So I presume then that you thought that this product might die.
Yeah. Not necessarily die, but it would get to that stage where it almost runs itself. The name's out there. It's a product that, people will discover by nature, essentially. And you reach that impact feeling of, wow, what's this product people talking about here and there? And then it just becomes that. It coasts, essentially. But we were talking about this before we'd even launched. We said, right, we've got 2 years of absolute go time with this. And we looked at a product that we thought we've got something that can penetrate a market, and then we go wide and we diversify and we take these customers, and then we launch the real brand, the real FREETRAIN, essentially.
So then you turn FREETRAIN essentially into a clothing brand, right? Alongside this product. Now, obviously, some famous clothing brands from your area, specifically Gymshark and people like that. Why did you want to go into a marketplace to compete with brands of the size of Gymshark?
Even from the first day that we thought of the product, even when we were coming up with the name was always one eye on the brand, because we didn't just want to be known for we have made this vest and it's great to hold your phone. The name FREETRAIN right from day one was what does FREETRAIN stand for? It gives you the freedom to train in no matter what field you're in. So whether that's boxing, biking, running, it's universal. It can be a name that stands up there with the likes of Puma, Nike, Adidas. It can be that household sportswear brand. And we wanted to stand by that from day one. And we kind of got proof of that with the vest in terms of it was right. Everyone from all different fields, all different cultures, all different backgrounds and abilities were wearing this product. And we saw like the community is coming together for that brand, for the name FREETRAIN. People feel comfortable wearing the product and having that name on the chest, in day-to-day life. So we knew that the name was right, and we always, like James just touched on, that was the in with the product. The goal was always to be a household sportswear apparel brand, because that's really where we come from. So with our professional sports background, growing up Nike and Adidas fanboys, why do we like that brand? It's the people they've got in it, it's the fit of the materials, it's the quality, it's what they stand for as a brand. And we believed that right from the get-go, FREETRAIN, we want to be there alongside them, because we feel like we have that point of difference. We are about culture, we're about quality, with a new age, I'm not afraid to say it, with a new age Nike, and that's what we've always believed in from day one.
And so when you obviously go into clothing, right? Did you obviously Gymshark have gone into like they wanted to culture the lifting environment. They want to be the lifting brand. Have you just gone completely wide on how you want to be, or do you want to be the brand for the athlete, or are you trying to be the brand for the everyday gym goer, or what kind of niche were you going for with that?
We're the brand for the people, first and foremost. And the reason for that is because like the people is where it starts, and what we want to do is we want the same way. If you think you need a product, so in this day and age, you'll wake up, you go, I need a new quarter zipper. Nike come to your mind. I want a new tracksuit to lounge around the house in. Nike come to mind. And yes, they started off in a niche field similar to us. They started off with the running, but then they diversified, and the big thing for them was the Michael Jordan. But essentially, where we fall is within the culture, within where all these sports stars come from, and they start with humble beginnings, most of them, and then they end up being superstars. But essentially what that does is that gives the guys from the humble beginnings that opportunity to kick on. You think about the name FREETRAIN, it is that train to success, and it is the freedom. And you look at, say, I think, you can see the obvious difference between myself and Jack, and say, the fact that we've got representatives of different culture. If you look at the team that we've got is completely diverse. All we want to do is we just want to do really cool things. The reason why we couldn't wait for the clothes to come out so we could do groundbreaking campaigns, so we can build on our mantra, which is be better. We wanted to create that just do it moment. Our thing is be better. So whether that's being better as a human being, whether that's being better than you were yesterday, whether that's you being better than your competitor, we wanted to create this thing, this product that you put on, not just the vest, but whether it's a tracksuit, whether it's a training t-shirt or a pair of shorts, and you're going out there the same way that we feel to be the best, whether that's the best version of ourselves or the best in the field. That's where we see ourselves. And you ask that question, why would we want to compete, or what made us want to compete with the likes of Gymshark? Because we're competitors, because we want to be the best, because we are inspired by those who have been before us, but we just want to do it better. We want to be better.
Yeah, and you kind of have your own vision for how that feeling is curated within your community of people that are wearing your stuff. And I suppose with the amount of vests that you've sold, you've managed to create an email list of like 350, 500,000 people that you can now have in front of you as an audience to market these new clothes to. So it allows you to get into the market a lot quicker than if you were starting from scratch. So the actual name FREETRAIN, was that something that was really hard to protect and trademark?
No, funnily enough. And again, it was like at that naming point, we had loads that we were throwing around. Obviously, initially it was the vest, and it was like, right, run vest, this and that. And essentially with one eye on the future, as Jack said earlier, it was what can we create in terms of a name that ticks multiple boxes: the freedom to train for people, freedom of people, that our train to freedom. Like there are so many, whenever we do a campaign, there are things for the newcomer to see, but there's so many hidden messages even for ourselves and within the brand, and that all stems even from the name itself. We had the funny story about how that logo came about. We told this lady that we were calling the brand FREETRAIN, and she came back and she came with the logo was the grill of a train to start with, but she was along the right lines in terms of our hidden meaning. But we looked at it, we thought, fucking hell, I can't run with that. But there are a lot of messages in everything that we do. Be better is take it how you need to take it at the time. And FREETRAIN is the same.
I think the logos of brands like yours, they evolve as you evolve as brands as well.
Yeah.
Because Nike's logo's evolved, Adidas's has, Gymshark's definitely has by a country mile. I think yours will too as you go through. I think it'd just be a natural evolvement of everything. Yeah. What position were you when you started to employ staff and started to bring people on?
Jog the memory now.
Three months when we thought we were going to launch.
Yeah, literally. We went through a bit of a process with that, didn't we? I'm trying to think now, because we were at our bedrooms for a while, and then we got our first office, didn't we? Yeah. In Sutton Coldfield, little box office, tiny box office.
Which is a big decision, isn't it?
Yeah, 3 months initially. It was like, small, just us two in there. And we'd kind of used family and friends up until that. We had kind of a guy running the ads who was through a family friend, and he was, quite important to start with, because obviously Facebook marketing and stuff back then was like really important. So we managed to kind of lock that down. I'm trying to think who the first person now. It was
June. It was June 2021. So essentially, we met this kid who there's a million stories about Kieran, and he basically came in. He said, "I can do it all the graphic design and whatnot." And if you ever saw this guy, right, he came in, walked into the gym when we'd had no office. And we were like, who the fuck is this? And he came in, blonde hair, like tanned. Zeus, about 6'4", and he came and he got out his laptop and he was like, this is what I can do. Half a bit of a con, long story short. And we had this little box office with the three of us. And then we thought, right, we've got so many meetings, we need to like improve our marketing and get on top of that. And then we hired this lad called Tom, who was actually my next door neighbour growing up. And we built this community of people who we trusted.
Like the Misfits office.
Literally, yeah. But essentially, I think it was June 2021, and we told you earlier about the sort of can being kicked down the road for the clothes. We went, right, we're going on a hiring spree now. It was all lads in the room. We went, we're going to hire 3 women, one for the design role, and then one for influencer marketing and another one for marketing, just so we could get the different concept, the different ideas, because, we can try all we want to get into a female's mind. Absolutely no.
Good luck.
Yeah, absolutely no chance.
Good luck.
I was waiting for someone to say.
Honestly, it's that whole timing thing. We just tried to prep, and we said, right, we're going to hire in June, 3 months to get everybody sort of up to speed with the brand, and then we're going to launch in September. did that happen? Did it fuck? We've pushed back, and again, COVID being the successful thing was a thing that like kicked the can down the road for about a year and a half.
You talk about getting in women's minds. I've tried to get women away from all these toxic podcasts that they're listening to. And you try being a ball geezer trying to achieve that in your life. I tell you now, boys, it's hard. I tell you. So girls, put me in the WhatsApp group. All right, share the podcast. But no, I get what you're saying, man. And you need you when you're trying to build and culture a brand, you can't just have a load of lads in the room with a fucking ping pong table in the middle just trying to think about, you know, how to add the female side into what you're doing. You're just not going to happen. You need that feminine energy in something like that when you're trying to build it. You get a different concept, they look at things from a completely different angle that you look at. Even like how I'm just looking at the zip on your top. You know, you might think the zip's right, but the girls might have an idea of how the zip could be smoother. You know, it's just little things that they pick up, the intricacies, I think, in brands that women just have so much more intricate detail in sometimes than us blokes. We're just like, yeah, let's crack out. That looks wicked. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you found through your design team?
Yeah, I think it's only fair to do that. And just as the name stands, FREETRAIN, we needed to have more, different minds from different places, like you say. I think that's only being fair to the brand, because if we just ran with our two ideas or, the initial two lads that came in, it's like, nah, certainly at, 3 months in, this needs to be a little bit more diverse, and we wanted to do that from the off. So, yeah, like Jay said, the first three after that were female.
I tell you the other thing to throw in as well, they're much better employees in terms of working. You look outside and the lads are trying to have a game of whatever, like throwing the fits of thing, and the girls just get their heads down and work. So,
well, if I think as well, like women just concentrate better when they have a purpose and they know they're going towards a vision. They just crack on with it. Like, yeah. Whereas me, I'm like, I've got this vision, and then I'm like, I'm over there doing something that's not in the vision because I'm like, I don't know, and I'm like, why am I doing that for? That's not even on the whiteboard, mate.
Yeah,
what are you doing that for? But we do kind of get lost in that. We need a little bit of a direction. That's why there has to be the balance, and that's something I've learned as well throughout this. Because I'm trying to get more women on the podcast, right? And I'm inviting more women all the time, because I realised you need that feminine energy on the podcast as well. I need that perspective. I've not had that perspective for about 20 or 30 episodes now. You need that, so you need it in all areas of your life. I think it's important. But how many employees are you up to now? 8
full-time. And then we have a couple of people kind of outsourced and just on subcontracts and stuff. But yeah, got 8 in the bunker, HQ. And
you turnover revenue of 10 million with 8 employees. Good numbers. How many what's your kind of vision and your revenue number vision for like the next couple of years?
Oh, that's throwing a spanner in the works in terms of revealing the plans. I think realistically, we believe we can, in the next sort of 5 years, we've got a plan to go between 50 and 100 million. And that's very ambitious, we know, but we also know how quickly these things can take off. And, I think we're at this stage in the company where we are building out that infrastructure, and we're building out product lines, we're building out marketing campaigns, and the next few years are mapped out. I think in the immediate short term, don't particularly want to say too much, but that is the goal within the next 5 years, to reach between those figures.
And are you just doing predominantly male stuff at the moment?
It's full male and female.
Male and female.
I think just on that point as well, I think that the next clear goal for us over the next year is just to get the recognition that we want for our apparel range, because we've been so known for the vest, which is fantastic because it has enabled us brand recognition. We know who FREETRAIN are, but we're that passionate and that confident in the clothes as we were with the vest. We just want to get the name out there for the clothes, because we know that when people do receive the clothes and they become part of this brand, as we've showed you today, and some of the clothes, hopefully you'll back us up on this, is we really believe in it. And just like all the stories and things we've touched on today, when you really believe in something, it's true. It's kind of a matter of time, and we were almost thinking now we just got to put the hammer down and get the awareness for the clothes, because they're sick. They're really good.
No, I kind of see the way that you boys have gone about that, but part of me thinks, if I'm honest, about this recognition thing, that you boys potentially might be pursuing recognition in that because potentially you didn't get the recognition you thought you deserved within the football game.
Potentially, yeah. But, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I think FREETRAIN especially has given us that route to let that go. It's and I
so
think
you do believe you both found peace there?
Massively.
100%. I was just
go
I
on.
was just going to say I can't. We'll often talk about football, Lucy. I don't even watch it anymore. Like that stage of my life, I appreciated it for what it was and all the learnings. But it's like it's so far gone now, especially for me. You know, I've been not playing for 7 years now. This has almost nothing. Just being completely honest, nothing to do with that for me. It's like I want FREETRAIN to be successful because of FREETRAIN.
I like that. Because I was just trying to find out whether you boys had found the peace. Because I know there's certain times in my life where I thought I found peace with certain things, and then I realised, oh shit, I'm still a little bit triggered by that. And it was good because when I mentioned it, and you boys came in and you were just peaceful about it, so I knew you'd found peace, which is a great thing. Because in order to get where you're going to go as a brand, you have to find peace in the journey on the way to doing it as well. You know, it's important. I've seen a lot of people that, you know, I was interviewing Matt from Space Goods the other day. Smashed it. He smashed it in life. Smashed everything, and he thinks he in his head he's done nothing. Like, and I'm like, mate, don't you realise what you've achieved? You turned over 11 million from your kitchen at 24 years old. And in his head, he thinks he's fucking. In his head, he's like, "Nah, I'm a loser, mate. I'm not doing that now." I'm like, "Fucking what? It's that psychology of how you can get in your own mind and beat yourself up about a story that's not even true."
Yeah. Do you know what though? I think I can't speak for Jack, but I have that about myself without a doubt.
Well, that difficulty.
Yeah, that whole what have you done? What have you done? Again, I think, you know, in terms of finding peace with things that have gone wrong, I'm there with that. And I think once you can't change it, and I go back to that spell that I had where I'd left Brighton. What I realised is anything that went wrong in that period in time, what I was doing after didn't affect the result that's just happened. But essentially, I think you'll find this with a lot of, I hate this word like you wouldn't believe, but it's the only word to describe it, entrepreneurs or people who, people who are trying to create businesses. It's that whole, Piers Morgan said it years ago in terms of when you wake up in the morning, you got to run faster than your opponent. The antelope has to run faster than the lion has to run faster than the antelope. We've had some unbelievable moments where, you know, our phones were pinging off and it was Paul Pogba's in your vest, can you believe it? Being sent Van Dijk running in the product, or, you know, whoever else out there, getting off the phone to certain people and, you know, seeing Kevin Hart wearing the vest was incredible. And we're like on the phone laughing and joking, go, can you believe it? Like, and then all of a sudden it's right, but we've got to get these vests in now because, you know, if we don't, they're going to run out in 3 weeks' time, and you're constantly on the wheel and
ups and downs.
You know, and you mentioned those numbers, what we've done, it doesn't even make me smile because we know where we can get to, and it just keeps you on that pursuit all the time, and you're in that state of like cadence. I
understand it, but you have to take a moment at some point in time, boys, and go, do you know what? Fair fucking play. You know, we've had an absolute tear here.
It's nice when you say it, and I think we probably shouldn't we? But it's not natural for us to have that.
Well, until you boys accept that, you accept like the little bit of celebration for like kind of where you're at, you're not being truly present, are you? And
yeah,
it's just something I've realised that it's when you bring it back to that level, you kind of have to celebrate it. Otherwise, you know, you could go completely polar opposite and kind of forget. Then you get to 100 million, and you still think, oh yeah, but what about 1 billion? And you're like, yeah, but fuck, you still done 100 million. Like fair play. Like, we're two lads that were playing in fucking League Two, getting £250 a week a few years back. Like it's pretty fucking phenomenal when you think about it.
Maybe you should think about it a bit more.
Yeah.
So I was just like, my answer to that is like, it's just life now, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
this is so like, you know, when we quit our jobs, but even before that, this has been like quite a long journey now, and it just seems like we're just in it, aren't we?
Yeah.
And
But enjoy it. But enjoy it.
Well, we are,
But
yeah.
enjoy-
And that's what I mean. It's just like, yeah, this is just our life. So we're not almost like searching for anything or looking back. It's like we are just in this.
What are your roles now within the business as like each of you? Like, what are your roles?
Don't know. No, honestly, it's mental. We cover everything at the minute. The team's still quite small, so I mean, even in terms of the day-to-day runnings of it, we need to get out there a little bit more. And you know, you are the first podcast where we've come on and spilt our guts and stuff. And I don't think many people know what we look like, to be honest. And you look at a lot of these brands that are successful, and we have been speaking about this quite a lot. We are very humble in our ways, and we're very quiet, and we put the brand first. But I think in order for people to understand the brand completely, we need to get out there a little bit more, because
people wouldn't understand. Like it's clear to see if you're on the YouTube for the YouTube video. Obviously, you know, different. You're from fucking completely different cultures for a start. You're different. You know, different color skin, like different backgrounds, like a whole different demographic. And if people can't connect with that and what you're trying to articulate, it kind of creates a divide between you and them.
Yeah, completely. But then, you know, you will see the elements of the product. So these products, especially the male items, they're built in our image, in a sense. They're built because we have lived and breathed sportswear, and we have gone through the testing phase, and we've said this isn't good enough. This needs to fit like that. You know, and we will diversify that even further. But we've always had to do things that we believe in. So in terms of where we fit across the brand, or our roles at the minute, is very much product, marketing, and people, essentially.
But will there be a point in time where you might come in and say, right, James is better at product, Jack, you're better at managing supply chain. Do you know what I mean? And just start taking more senior roles and delegating the stuff that perhaps are your weaker points within the business.
I think potentially there's always who can see into the future. I think that has potential, but the other thing is we've always done things together, and I think even in that we touched on a few of the key decisions and just how the business has happened. It's always been, the only way I can explain it is like banging two heads together and coming out with a good option. And whether that's in, for example, we've had times where, let's say, customer service has gone to shit, or there's been an issue, or there's, oh my God, the vests aren't going to land. There's been so many instances in each kind of category of the business which we've had to both be there for and come up with the best solution. We're almost very well versed in all of the departments of the business, and I think we're almost now wanting to get people in where we go, they're actually better than us in that field. And I think that's where we can elevate then, and potentially then who knows what will happen. But that's pretty much how to see a different situation, how we've currently done it. I don't know. I think it's
really hard as well, because I think even if you strip it back and be absolutely completely honest, we're obsessive about this brand. So it's difficult. It would be difficult for me at this point to go, right, I'm not going to be involved in product whatsoever.
Because it's a disconnect, yeah.
But again, until that point, and it's hard for the pair of us because we didn't go to university, either of us. So, you know, until this person comes through the door who goes, I'm your product man, that's when we'll step back. But essentially, even to that point, if we step in and we go, that product isn't FREETRAIN, that we will always have that veto.
Well, the reason why I was saying about finding out what your thing is and delegating the rest wasn't because I thought that you boys should step out of product. I was thinking more you should step into product and step out of like CEO founder role, step out of CFO roles and all this kind of stuff, because the biggest mistake that I've seen from brands at your size is that they don't bring on the CFO early enough and get the financials right and have the cash flows right, and that's what fucks a lot of brands up. It's like they get that completely wrong, because you can't. It's the piece of the business that no one ever looks at, but it's the most important piece of the business essentially. Because yes, you need a good product, but you need to be able to, like you say, be able to pay your supply chain, get your supply chain, land it on time, all that stuff. Was a CFO something you brought on, or have you brought on any like kind of financial people in the business because you knew that was important, or is that something you're bringing on in the future, or what's the game there?
We're in the process of it, literally, and every point that you've just made there, we completely agree with. I mean, what are our best assets in this brand? It is living and breathing the front end of it, and I think it is naive for us to turn around and say, right, well, that's it, we're going to be a CEO, when there's people out there with 10, 20 years experience in this field and in other fields, you know, even in terms of supply chain, it's the same thing. And I think being the two of us and being as honest as we are with each other, we can sit there and go, we're not built for this right now, or this is something that we need to learn.
And the only way you can learn is by having someone to look up to in your own business and go, fucking hell, that's a CEO. Do you know what I mean? That's someone who directs a business. Oh, that's why he's the CFO. You know, that's why he's dealing with the financials. That's why he's doing the balance sheet, because he can just see and move things and make things move in different ways that we can't even fucking compromise and configure in our minds. I think something very powerful with accepting. Like, I accepted when I started this podcast, I'm not going to be the video guy. I'm not going to be the guy that edits the content. I'm not going to be that guy or posting it on all these different social platforms. I can't do that, because that takes away my love for having the conversation, right? So you have to be radically honest and understand then, okay, if that's not your game, you got to pay someone to do that, and you got to pay someone whose game that is. Not just pay someone for the sake of doing it, but actually someone who's actually passionate and puts the same amount of love that you put into having the conversation into the actual creation of the clips, of the content, of the even just posting the content. It's such a nuance that gets missed along so many businesses, I find. You know, it's important that you guys, I think, have kind of picked that up, and now you're getting those people in place. Because I suppose, what are the key hires then, do you think, for you as a brand now? Because obviously you've gone from 0 to 10 mil over 2.5, 3 years. What would you say at that point, when you get to the 10 mil revenue number, what are the key hires that most businesses need to put in place?
Well, we haven't hired them yet. We probably want to hire about 5 this year, 5 people, and that'll be kind of, I don't know whether we should go into it or not, but there's, you know, like, I don't know.
I suppose the ones that you've already mentioned, in terms of, we are looking for an active CEO, someone who can come in and, you know, take over
They might be listening to this podcast, boys. So you better off telling the positions, because I'll tell you now, there's some weapons that listen to this podcast.
You know, somebody versed in, say, strategy, marketing and e-commerce as well, especially apparel, sports apparel, because again, we have the feeling of the market and we understand that, but essentially we want someone to come in and say, right, this is the roadmap, this is how this brand have done it, this is how that brand have done it. And again, because we are control freaks to some degree, we'll say, well, this is how FREETRAIN are going to do it, in terms of taking that plan and taking that experience and being able to put our own twist on it. But again, I think it's just strengthening in all categories, really, across what we've got. Because if we are going to grow, if that product line is going to get bigger, if our marketing is going to get bigger, more interesting, more interactive, we're going to need people who have been there and done it. We're going to need fresh blood and fresh enthusiasm into the business, really. Yeah,
because when I was talking to a few different people that have done 50 to 100 mil, they said to me, when you get to 10 mil revenue, that's when you need to, you feel like, that how they've explained it to me, they've all explained it pretty similar. They say you feel like you can't afford to put in the people that you need, but you fucking need to, because if you don't, you'll shit yourself on the back end, and you'll have you could get to like 30 staff and more revenue, but your wheels are falling off all over the place, because you haven't set the management structure in place to allow yourself to go to the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's a good thing. And I think the one thing that we're really happy with now is the kind of foundations have been laid in terms of the ethos of the brand, and people coming in, they've got to get a grip of it, the building itself, the kind of manufacturers, the structure, the marketing. It's all kind of in-house now, and we're almost ready to just scale that in a few kind of key positions, really. And I think the other thing as well is, if you look at some of the brands that have grown quickly, the good thing is now we can look at that and say, well, you know, you referenced Gymshark earlier, Castor, another great example. The growth that Castor have had has been incredible, and the good thing about now...
What are they doing revenue numbers, do you know what, roughly?
We don't want to talk about them.
Yeah.
But they're doing a lot more than us.
I think they're about 200-300, but it's... you know, the good thing about this day and age with
But
everything.
it shows you what you can do. Like it's like, it's all right saying I don't want to talk about it. I know I know you're joking. I know you're bantering, but it's like that. It shows you there is no limit to what you can achieve as long as you have the right frameworks in place. I think it's all frameworks and mental models when you start getting to the revenue numbers that you're at.
That's a good thing, I think, these days with everything almost being accessible. You know, there's that much content out there and that much information now. If you got half a brain, you can figure out when people employed this person and as they went on their growth journey. So that's a good thing that we've got now, because, you know, maybe going back 10 years, that's a lot harder to find out. And the other thing is, well, just fresh blood as well. So, you know, young people with young ideas, and even in terms of like a marketing thing, we just had a young lad come on who's in charge of our TikTok now, and within the course of like 2 months, the views have gone through the roof because he's naturally looking at that kind of thing. And that's what we're also, you know, keen to do, is realise where we're at on our journey, where kind of how we grew up, the platforms but also knowing there's some big platforms coming up now. And yes, we can learn that, but the easiest thing is to get someone whose natural instinct is, well, that's my platform of this generation.
Yeah, I'm currently looking at putting content on platforms that I'd previously written off. You know what I mean? Like for my podcast, and I'm like, I can see some visions to it. I'm like, oh, dumb fucker, you've missed that. And you kind of, oh yeah, all right, now we can fix it. Do you know what I'm saying? It's important. It's important. I did a Zoom podcast the other day, right? And for so long, I've told myself every reason why you can't do Zoom podcasts, and they're not as good, and you can't do this and you can't do that. But it's like the secret to me scaling is like, yeah, but if you're putting out twice the amount of content that you're putting out, you're growing at twice the rate. Plus, there is value in these Zoom conversations. And there are some people that I genuinely can't get to because they're just so unavailable to meet in person, because some people just don't meet. So you've got to be open to the fact of doing things that you previously told yourself aren't right for you. Yeah. You kind of have to check yourself, don't you?
Yeah. I think that is the epitome of moving forward, really, out of anything, because similar to yourself, not quite the same, but, you know, we've had a snobbish attitude towards content in the past, and we've gone, especially over the last 6 months, it's been a real teething problem, and the lessons that you learn, we thought, TikTok, never catch on. Do you know what I mean? And that sort of thing. To some degree, we've gone, we're going to keep our content like this, it's going to be a phase or whatever, and you focusing on the things that you know, and you're a little bit, what's the word, you're just a little bit naive.
It comes down to, like, we all have an ego, and we have to know when our ego is set to protect us from danger, but also set to protect us from growth.
Yeah,
and it's about having that happy medium of where that ego gets, where you need to check yourself and ask yourself, is what I'm saying even fucking true? Yeah. Because so many of the things that we say in our lives aren't even predicated on any facts. Like, the people that we've picked them up from could be anybody, couldn't they? Like, essentially, like, you know, when you were growing up and your mum's taught you something about life, and it's not even, it's her truth, but it's not the truth. And then you go through your whole life and you have this whole perception of people or business or people with money or people with anything, because you believe the same psychology as what your mum's taught you, until the day that you question it, right? And I think not enough of us question our narratives in our life. And I think it's by questioning the narrative that you allow your brand to grow, that you allow your mind to open and everything to start to fit into places, because you have to question everything that you think you know. Because I guarantee you, sometimes people say, oh, Frankie, you know a lot about podcasting. I know fuck all. Because if I think I know everything about podcasting, I know nothing anyway. Because that's the whole point. You know nothing. So what are some of the things then that you boys thought that you knew that you've now discovered you didn't know as well as you wanted to?
A lot. So much.
Come on, Jack, give me something.
I want to try and be like really practical here. The first price someone offers you is never the final price. And I think that's just a real takeaway. If anyone's looking to start their ecom brand, whether it's like working with a marketing agency, working with a company who provides service, 9 times out of 10, the first price they offer you is not the actual value. So be open to negotiating, be open to wait a little bit and see if they come back. And that's just, without thinking about it too much, that's a real takeaway for someone, is like, just try and get the real value out of someone.
Yeah.
That's one thing off the top.
I'd say just ask questions. I just thought before, like you said early on, like the information is out there and, you know, you can really have a go. To be honest, there is so much we could be here all day in terms of things that I've learned. But yeah, I'd say the questions is everything.
Yeah, and I just being open to ask the questions, like you say, is the key to every piece of growth that you'll experience in your life. You know, just being open to having people say no to you as well, I'd say.
I think a real lesson we've learned is if something's too good to be true, it normally is. And there's multiple examples. But I think to the youngsters listening, especially, if it sounds too good, you really have to question it and don't commit to money and paying for things because you can get stung. And especially in young startups, and if you've only got maybe a small amount of capital to have a go at something, you've got to make every penny count and don't get fooled by people who can see you coming a mile off.
What are some of the examples of that you've had in your specific business?
Well, I'd say I think that's probably the most poignant lesson to drop off to people because early on, again, I'll talk about the trolls under the bridge. We started off young and naive, and we met a guy who said he could take our product from concept to manufacturing. And which is just incredible. And we've gone, oh my God, we've hit the jackpot. Found the first one on Google. And then he quoted us 20 grand. And at the time we were going, we can't afford this. So we went back and we said, we can't afford this. Is there anything we can do? And in about the space of 10 minutes, he halved the quote and took a few things out. And he's like, well, this is what I can do now. And there's us thinking we're the best businessmen on the planet.
He's halved the quote and he's took out the concept to market and just made it concept.
Yeah, no, essentially, he's just taken off the last letter of every word. But honestly, it was incredible. And we went down there, and this was like the first ever stage. And this is what essentially, kind of made us question absolutely everything as time went on, because we went down there and we're paying $3 grand for this first round, and it was like there's another 3 rounds after that. And as we get there, he's behind the curtain finishing it off. He'd only started it in the morning, but we've paid for this. Like, you're paying $3 grand for someone to put something together with materials they've got in their living room, which is just absolutely absurd. And then I always remember the last part of his quote was it was going to be $2.5 grand for introduction to manufacturers. Bearing in mind, a year down the line, we've picked up the phone to a manufacturer and said, can we come in and show you our idea and get it made? People will be sitting there along the way ready to take your money off you if you're not savvy enough or if you don't ask enough questions. And I think that's probably the point that Jack's making. There is no easy road, and that's probably the thing to say. If someone's offering you that easy road, tread carefully as you're going, because, everybody talks about this journey, and when was the last time you heard somebody say, oh, it was easy, I phoned this person up and this happened, and now here I am at I've got a billion pound company.
There's been a few times in my life where I thought money was coming easy to me, and it smacked me so hard on the back end, and I lost a lot from it. Like, I've been caught a few times hard, like even in the last 12 months, like really fucking smacked in the face. And I can tell you straight down the line, when you get smacked, you're like, holy fuck. That seemed, on the front end, that seemed such an easy thing for me to just, I'll sell it for this, I'll do it for that, you make that margin, wicked. Then you're fucking scratching your head and thinking, how the fuck have I gone from positive fucking 65% profit margin on that to losing fucking 100 grand on top of what I fucking already took in? It's like, how have I done that?
Yeah.
And that happens because, well, for me, what I've learned is you can't sell other people's knowledge, you can't sell other people's visions or anything like that. Anything that anyone else creates, you can't sell that. You have to sell your own stuff, because then you can control the variables of it.
Yeah.
And you can't. That's one thing I want everyone to take away from this is you can't. If we all know that if you started an e-com store and started to sell a branded stuff, other people's brand, you can't control the variables of that, the margins, the quality, this and the other. So you're now in a price fucking war. Whereas when you're creating your own clothing, like you boys are creating, or you create your own vest and stuff, there are variables that you can control. The quality variable, the how the product arrives at the customer, all these variables that you want to control. So I'd just say, like, control every variable of your business at every level as much as possible, without reliance too much on third-party fulfillment in one area of your business, because it leaves you wide open to getting fucked.
Massively. Well, as you were saying that, then it's dawned on me, probably the biggest lesson that we could, one of the biggest lessons we can give out. And remember the old Think adverts where it says speed kills?
Yeah.
It's greed kills. Now, the reason for that being is because if you start cutting corners for margin, or if you start selling something you haven't got, it comes back to bite you in the arse, like no end. And I think there's been times in the past where we've taken gambles on certain things, thinking, well, this is the purple patch, this is the time where we've got to make money, and we've had products that haven't cleared customs yet, and we're going, well, we're just going to stick them online. That has happened previously, and it's happened one time, and we'll never ever do it again, because we were young lads at the time.
Stress
we were
it
fresh
causes.
to business, and there's so many stories, and I bet you there's so many founders out there that won't tell that story. But we've all done it. But like you say, the results are never what you want them to be. It normally comes back to bite you. And now we have this mantra where it's like, okay, we just have to deal with the time and how things are right now. And there's been things that have been out of our control in the past where things might be fulfilled slightly later, and there's nothing we can do about it. But there's no situation where we're kicking ourselves going, we wish we'd never done that because of this. Not everything's going to run smoothly. You look at Christmas and the whole debacle with the parcels going missing, or like the queues with Every and whatnot, but they are out of our control. But that time when we were young, and it was I think it was January 2020, we were in China, some vests went missing, we had some more coming on the way, and we were waiting for them to clear customs, and we put them online, and it just fucked things up for us. And it was very early on. And that could have been make or break if, there was more publicity around it, and, it was a slap on the wrist and we learnt from it. But essentially, we learnt from that point on, greed kills, and we will never do that again, because if you do that on a bigger scale, you're finished.
So powerful, boys.
One more thing, and again, I want this to be like real practical from lessons we've learnt, is especially when you're starting up, is don't over leverage yourself. And what I mean by that is, if you're working with other companies and they're providing a service, be careful of getting roped into 6 to 12 month contracts. And the only reason being that is a lot of people can see that coming. Now, if someone, what we found, if they're very good in the service they provide and they believe in what they're doing, you can suggest to do something on a month basis. Now, if that person providing the service is that good, they will be happy to say, I'll prove to you how good we are, and then look at a longer term something. But often at times you can over leverage yourself and sign up for something for 6 months, whether it's a media agency, for example. We've worked with quite a few media agencies, and the good ones will say, no worries, well, after a month you'll want to sign up for 6 months. But don't over leverage yourself to start with, because it can be quite hard to get out of them, and you can end up wasting a load of cash, which again, at a start-up young stage is really important.
I had a girl reach out to me the other day, and she was saying, from all these e-com founders that you've talked to, and the advice from selling your stuff online, what kind of, I've not got a lot of capital to start, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, yeah, but if you believe in what you do, you don't need a lot of capital for what you're doing. You're talking about, you've already got the product, because she'd already bought the product. I'm like, you're literally like £10-20 a day of ads away from selling out all your product over, say, X amount of days. Like, what's the risk here? Like, you can go, if you have to go get a job to make sure that you can do that and support your child as she's a young mum, like, just do that for a month. Like, it's not, people make it rocket science. It doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to be this massive, big struggle that you make it. Half the struggle in people's heads is with their own mind and with their own limited mindset. And I want to go back to this, predicated on the fact of the systems and processes that were installed in your mind from your parents, from what you know in life. And that's why you have to question every narrative, so that you can get over those blocks that kind of stop you from growth. Because at every level of growth, when I was speaking to Iman Gadzi, he's had to go through so many mind blocks to keep pushing through these ceilings of levels. And all of you founders and everyone that does anything, whether it's tens of millions onwards, you all have to push through so many fucking limiting beliefs that people don't talk about. And and there'll be limiting beliefs in your minds yet that we won't know until you get to the next echelon. When you get to 20 mil, you'll be like, oh, fuck, I didn't even realize I had that limiting belief. And then you go 30, and you know, they present themselves at all different levels. Never discount that. But guys, lads, I'd love having you on here and dropping these bombs with you. But if you both had to check out the world tomorrow, you're checking out. You can't leave FREETRAIN, you can't leave anything else, but you can leave some absolute banging pearl of wisdom for this audience today that's going to empower them and help them get to the next level. That little 1% that unlocks that box, what would it be?
When making decisions for yourself, make it the decision that you would want for your child. So
fucking that's powerful, bro.
So my son, I now look at the decisions I make for myself and put myself as my own dad. So I'll take myself out of that equation and I will say what is best for my son at that decision at that time, because I'm there to protect him. Every decision I make, even though it might be the hard one, it's for him. So I'd say it's even the same with your business. If you are struggling, or if you don't know whether to turn left or right, or there's a harder decision than the other one, take yourself one step further and put yourself in that position where you could say, if you want the best for that person, which is yourself, and it should be yourself, what advice would you give? And when you come to that answer, you make that decision.
Yeah, I get that.
It's tough to follow.
I felt that as well. You got a bit to do here.
It's not going to be as deep as that. I think mine would be get to know yourself as well as you can, as quick as you can, because I think once you're comfortable with yourself in terms of you're comfortable in your own company, you know what you're good at, you know what you're not necessarily good at, the sooner you can become comfortable with yourself, I think that gives you a better opportunity to go out there and do what you want.
Mate, that is just as powerful. That is just, they're both powerful, because I agree wholeheartedly with both of them. I really do. And I thank you guys for being so open and honest with your journey with FREETRAIN. Obviously 0 to 10 mil plus now, boys. You've been on a fantastic tear, and I have no doubt that you're going to be another success story for Birmingham. And thank you so much for your time and coming on here today and dropping that knowledge. But guys, do me a solid favour, yeah? If you've got value out of this, which I have no doubt in my mind that you will have, share it. Put it in the girls' WhatsApp group. Chuck it, lads. Put it in the lads' WhatsApp group. Share it online, on everything. Subscribe on all the platforms. I appreciate it wholeheartedly on every level, like you wouldn't even believe. I'm trying to build one of the biggest education podcasts that's ever been, that actually helps people move the needle in their life. I want you to feel that on every level, because that's how I feel it in every part of my soul when I create this content for you. And I just love it on every level. And yeah, it means a lot to me. So I appreciate all the support. Much love.
Guys, do me a solid favour. Drop a comment below this video and let us know who you want on the podcast next.